was King's friend, rock and roll legend Lloyd Price, who helped turn King from numbers to boxing. Price used to perform at a club King owned in Cleveland in the early 60s. Price also knew Muhammad Ali.
Well, I knew Ali about maybe a year or two before I met Don. I met Don in 60, 61, and I knew Ali before he even fought for any big fights. And was long down through the years before I actually introduced the two together. I probably introduced Ali to Don by telephone.
King saw his chance. With Price's help, he convinced Ali to be the star attraction at a charity exhibition to benefit a local hospital. King, who knew little about boxing, called veteran matchmaker Don Elbaum.
And I wait for a moment, and all of a sudden, I hear on this other end, Don Elbaum! And the phone must have gone back 2 feet. He says, Don Elbaum! He said, let me tell you something, Don. He says, my name is Don King, and there's a black hospital that's in a lot of trouble here in Cleveland, and we've got to save it.
8,500 Muhammad Ali fans turned out to watch the former world heavyweight champ mix it up with 4 opponents in a 10-round exhibition.
Ali clowned with 4 different sparring partners. Don King displayed his gift for glitz by adding a fashion show and a music concert to the event.
A Cleveland hospital came out the big winner on the boxing magic of Muhammad Ali.
The hospital got $20,000, and Don King's new career was launched.
We had sessions.
Lloyd Price advised his friend that he needed a new look.
My experience in show business is that you could never let the artist be bigger than the record company. So I would tell Don, you can't let the fighters be bigger than Don King. So Don came up with the thing, make me big. And so it came up with the tuxedos. It came up that Don should have a real unique look. So one day we was just looking, Don was doing his hair like this. I said, oh, hey, that's the look. That's the look right there. So Don started combing his hair forward. And before you knew it, he had that look, and everybody started calling him Electric Lights.
That is because we have lost
King arrived on the scene at a time when most of the fighters were black, but all of the promoters were white. At a time of rising black consciousness, Elbaum advised King that he could take over boxing. It was the right time, but King was the wrong man.
When he started going into all of his black stuff and this and that, we couldn't look at each other because we would get hysterical. And there got to be a point that Don quite often says, hey, this is all bullshit. He says, this is all crap. He says, but whatever I got to do to sell, to get my point across, I'm going to sell. White, black, Chinese, he didn't care.
With Elbaum's assistance, Don King went to Jamaica in 1973 to see a heavyweight title fight. He rode to the stadium in a limousine with the champion, Joe Frazier.
The fight is over. The fight is over. The winner is George Foreman.
He sat in Frazier's corner, but when the challenger, George Foreman, unexpectedly knocked out Frazier to win the title, King jumped into the ring and pursued the new champion.
Did Frazier hurt you at any time? My man. Yeah, I got it. My man.
King then left the stadium in Foreman's limousine and became his promoter.
First round.
He just overwhelms you. His personality, his use of words, whether they're in place or not in place, his just character is just something that when you first meet him, it's very, very easy to become like he's been your friend forever and that he's doing everything he can for you.
In 1974, just 3 years out of prison, Don King created his masterpiece. Preaching black solidarity, King convinced Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and the black government of Zaire to join in what would become known as the Rumble in the Jungle.
Put a
blessing on us, oh great one.
King put together a boxing match and a music event in a $14 million deal, which few people expected would ever take place.
Hello, darling. How are you? Miss Etta James. Hello, Etta, darling. How are you? I'm delighted to see you.
In a brilliant stroke of salesmanship, King convinced the government of Zaire to put up $10 million to finance the fight, even though the country was mired in poverty. Of the three men who started King out in boxing, two were still with him, Muhammad Ali and Lloyd Price, who was now a partner with King in the music deal. Don Elbaum had been cut out by King and was left behind.
Coleman's throwing more punches now. Maybe this could be the tactic of Ali to let the man punch himself out. 30 seconds left in round 8.
The fight was memorable, pitting an undefeated George Foreman against Muhammad Ali, a 3-1 underdog.
Another sneaky right hand. This time he worked over the shoulder of Foreman.
Ali won with a volley of punches in the 8th round. The event made Don King. But even in his triumph, King betrayed another one of the men who had helped get him his start and who had been his loyal friend. He cheated Price out of his share of the partnership.
I know that I should have a piece of the business because Don told me I should have a piece of the business. In fact, we should be 50-50 partners. To this day, and that was in 1974, I haven't got paid. I was locked into a letter of credit.
6 years later, King would betray the last of the men who helped give him his start. After Muhammad Ali had suffered a brutal beating in his last championship fight, King shortchanged him out of $1 million. Ali sued to get his fair share of the purse. But King found the one man who could get Ali to drop the suit: Ali's longtime friend and Muslim brother, Jeremiah Shabazz. King asked Shabazz to deliver payoff money to Ali and have him sign a release.
I was in Don's office. Don gave me the money with specific instructions: don't give this money to Ali unless he signs that paper.
And it was $50,000 on his desk?
Yeah, it was $50,000 cash dollars, yes.
Ali, his health deteriorating and facing years of expensive litigation, accepted the cash and signed the release.
I'll never do it. When I presented the documents back to Don, he was just so pleased. He said, I had done a real great job. He thanked me, and, I was his boy at that time. Don and I would still be friends, except that this guy, he just uses people. When he uses you up, then he has no more need for you. He goes on to the next one. You're just so much cannon fodder, just a nothing.
But Muhammad Ali and Lloyd Price are not bitter about how Don King used them. Price has sold over 42 million records and says he is too content to brood about the past. He and King are still friends, and their plan to make King the biggest promoter in boxing had worked.
It's just great to be an American.
Don King. Only in America, John. You're a star. You can do anything. Any profession you want. I was about boxing. You got it. Let me sign you up.